Hello. How's it going, everyone?
Hopefully you're all surviving isolation A-okay. It's a bit difficult, but
Yes.
welcome back to Corpses and Cocktails.
Welcome back.
We had a week off. I think almost everyone was sick.
Yes. We all needed a mental health day, physical health day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It was rough.
it was a good time. You know what? I think sometimes it's good to like kind of step back and just be like, all right, you know what? I do need a time to just, mentally do nothing, physically do nothing.
I always find it so hard. It was especially when like you've got I'm gonna burp, sorry. I do this almost every time. When you've got something set, I find it really hard to achieve that. Whereas like in the group chat, when hey, want to do an episode tonight? We're like, yeah, cool, done.
Mhm.
But it's like, can we do Wednesday at 4 p.m? No.
Cannot set it. No. It is way too hard to organize. So I heard that you. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I said how was work?
Oh, how's work? Oh, I hate work. I don't want to work, but I'm also very privileged to be working right now. So it's catch-22 right now.
It's a sweet moment.
Yeah, it is. But you know what? Getting through. Gave myself a 3-day weekend, which I'm enjoying. Yep, thank you. I'm in the middle. Relaxing, enjoying it. So yeah, very, very happy to just catch up on some sleep and enjoy life a bit more.
Hopefully soon we can bloody do this in person.
Yes. Oh, I feel like that would just, I think really lift up our spirits.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so dying to have a cocktail with you.
Yeah, oh my God, same. Oh, that was so fun. So fun. You know what? I only have memories. Only memories right now, keeping me going.
How sad.
Yes, very sad. But I want to chat about before we get started, you saw the horrible documentary on Netflix. What was it called again?
It's called An American Murder. I think The Family Next Door.
The Family Next Door. Yes.
Yeah. So I watched that last night. I cried.
My God. It's horrible.
I survived all the way through up until his trial, and I started crying when the judge started crying. This old, like 50, like maybe 60-year-old male judge. When he started crying, I was like, that was it. That was it. It's
a heavy.
It's really heavy. I think it's really difficult because there's no reason as to why he did it.
That's the thing. Like, even the judge was like, you didn't have to kill them.
Yeah, just divorce. Yeah, like the lawyer was like, you don't murder your family, just get a divorce.
What? Because the consequences to you, like, one, you've just killed your children, and two, what if you get found out?
I know. And it was really, really eerie. So you like you're pretty much going through most of it like via like body cams and stuff.
Yes.
So like like the cops get there and like, Chris Watts runs up and he's like, hey mate. And the cop's like, I'm Steve. And he's like, yeah, I'm Chris. And he like walks inside. He's looking around the house and stuff. And he's like, standing there. And he's like, I just don't know where my wife is. And he looks at her phone and stuff. And like,
she would never leave her phone here. And the friend,
this is her lifeline.
Yep, her friend who was super worried. She's like, oh my God, what happened? He's like, really weird.
Yeah, and you could just, and he was so calm. But at the same time, like then they went to the neighbor's house and the neighbor like brought up his cameras and you see like Chris like reverse his car and like drive out and like reverse up the driveway. It was like 5 a.m. and he was like, oh, I was just putting tools into my ute before I headed off to work. And then Chris like left and he went back home and the cop was still there and the neighbor was like, that something's not right.
Yes.
Straight away, the neighbor was like, he's acting really, really weird. And I just...
just knowing that he did it, like, because I remember seeing her Facebook videos while she was missing. getting shared and everything. Being like, oh, this young mum, her 2 children are missing. And it had gone all the way to Australia, and I'd seen it Australia, not Australia, but seen it in my Facebook page. And I'm like, oh my God, that's, that's horrible. And then seeing that he did it, only a couple of days later, it's like.
And the fact that he tried to blame the wife. He was like, oh, she smuggled the kids, smothered, oh my God, smothered the kids in their sleep. I came home, they were dead. I got angry, I killed her. And then he eventually was like, no, I killed everyone.
Well, did you see when they were doing the interview, the interviewer literally gave him that as a reason? Did you notice that? She was like, listen, you failed the test, you killed them. Maybe did she kill the kids and you killed her? And you could see him like, oh, that's a good backstory.
Yeah.
I might use that. Yeah. What a sicko.
It makes me feel so uncomfortable. He just.
How could you do that? And your children.
You did watch it, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes.
Did you watch
it?
Yes. Yeah. The part where he was like, when he dropped the daughters in the oil tanks, and he was like, I saw her go, no, daddy, no, daddy. I was like, oh my God.
What a heck. Oh. Yeah.
And to be with, and because obviously the other woman was like, no, I didn't want kids. I didn't want anything. So it's like, you didn't even really have a reason.
There was no reason at all. I think maybe it's because she was pregnant. He was like, oh my God, I've got to. But even then, the text messages,
I reckon she seemed, from my point of view, very, very intense and very, very needy. If I get a night away from James and we've been together always, sorry, James, partly don't reply to him for a reason, so I can have some space, because all I do is talk to him.
Yeah.
And she was like, you haven't called the kids, you haven't done this, rah, rah, constantly texting. And then it's just breathe. So I don't know, to me, apparently, and she was very bossy and a bitch and stuff like that. But which is no excuse. I'm not saying that that's a reason to kill her, but I think he probably felt trapped. Maybe. I don't know.
Possibly trapped.
That's how I'm interpreting it anyway. You've already got kind of a marriage that's on the line, and now you've got another kid on the way. I mean, you can just get a divorce.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it seemed like she was giving him lots of lifelines, being like, it seems like you don't even want to be with us. She was literally, are you cheating on me? She's giving lots of outs, and he's like, no, I love you so much, and I want to be there with you and the kids.
True.
So many, you could see with the text messages, it's
that was so good how they did that with the text messages.
I know. And
that was really good.
It felt so real. I'm so glad they didn't do any reenactments or anything. It was good. That was a really good documentary.
It was a really good documentary. 10 out of 10 recommend.
Yeah.
It just gives me chills.
Oh, the poor babies. The poor babies.
I thought I don't know why, but I thought he buried them in the backyard.
Oh.
I might be confusing another case, but I thought that I'd heard somewhere that he'd buried them in the backyard, and when they said that he put them in an oil tank, I assumed like a gallon drum.
Oh, true.
Not a large 60-foot, oil drum. I don't know what they're called, tanks. I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm just confusing potentially two cases. Don't know what one though.
Well, it's been a little while since it happened. So and it'll be interesting to get it back into the spotlight, talking about how you don't kill your wives or your partner and your kids, just get a divorce.
Don't cheat and don't murder. Just
Cheat
leave.
murder, just leave. Oh my
Just
God.
leave.
Oh,
I
yeah.
felt like it made me feel like in no way is James a bad partner at all, and in no way am I hurt by him in any possible way. But it made me like, I was like in my head, I was like, I hope if he's ever not happy that he just leaves. Like I
I
was like,
actually said
I
to
hope
Matt
he
as I was
just
like, I said to Matt, I'm like, you can, just please just divorce me. You know, you can leave.
divorce me. Like
Oh,
literally, I was like, because James is always like, oh, when we have kids and stuff, and I'm like, he's gonna murder us.
we look into too many.
I know we need to stop. We should probably stop the podcast right
Yeah,
here.
I know. When we start getting a bit more maybe hysterical at certain things, we need to be like,
Everyone
all right,
stop listening, just to give us that sign that we need help.
we need to talk about survivor stories now.
Yes, we actually do. That's a really good idea. Let's do like Survivor Saturday or something.
Yes. Oh, that's a good idea. Survivor Saturday. I like that. I like that. All right. Well, who wants to go first? I can't remember who went first. I'll go first?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Mine is a pretty intense one. It is Robert Hansen, aka the Butcher Baker. So, Robert.
Is this the guy that's really big, bold, and fat?
No, it's actually completely different. He's
okay.
skinny and very. So Robert, he was born in Iowa in 1939. He was the son of a Danish immigrant, and he followed in his father's footsteps and became a baker. In his youth, he was skinny, very shy. He also had a stutter and very severe acne. And he was shunned by the girls at school, and this made him, have a real hatred to women in general. He was described as a loner and quiet, and Hansen, when he, was a teenager, began practicing hunting and archery as a teen, and this was often a refuge for him. He married a young woman in 1960. This is when he served a year in the army, and he also became an assistant drill sergeant at a police academy. He resided in Pocahontas, Iowa during these years. So Hansen's first crimes began in 1960, where he was arrested for burning down a school bus garage. And he said this was revenge for his unpopularity at school. He served 20 months of a 3-year sentence where he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenic tendencies. His psychiatrist noted that he had infantile personality and was obsessed with getting back at people who had wronged him. Hansen's wife filed for divorce during his first incarceration. Over the years, he was jailed for petty theft. In 1967, he moved to Anchorage, Alaska, and this with his second wife, Darla, who he married in 1963 and had 2 children. His children loved their father a lot, and he was very kind to them, and he was a very well-liked man, very well-liked by his neighbors, by his church. He also held several hunting records as well. So in 1971, December, this is when Hansen's first real severe crime happened. He was arrested for the abduction and attempted rape of a housewife. He was sentenced to 5 years, but only served 6 months. He was also charged around the same time with raping a sex worker, but his case was dropped in part of the plea bargain with the state, saying if he pled guilty for the attempted rape of the housewife, then his charges would be dropped for the rape of the sex worker. And this is when he realizes he can get away with sexually assaulting sex workers.
Oh my God.
So I'd just like to talk about Anchorage, an Alaskan town. It was a booming community, so it was an oil community, and that meant lots of money, lots of cocaine, and lots of money, cocaine mean women come. So there were lots of dance clubs, strippers, sex workers on the street and homes, lots of massage parlors as well. However, the women that worked here were often very vulnerable and were discovered in America by gangs. So they were offered lots of money by these gangs and a flight up to be topless dancers. However, when they arrived, they were actually trafficked and were forced into debt due to them living in the gangs' houses and working in the clubs and paying back the flight. So these women were incredibly vulnerable and often were, in the end, looking for a way out of their jobs. Give them kind of something new.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump forward a fair bit. So this was 1971. We're now going to jump forward 11 years to September 12th, 1982, where John Daly, who was a police officer, and he was going moose hunting. He found a depression in the ground, and he also found some clothing. This is where he discovered the body of Sherry Morrow, who was 24. She was a dancer, and her head was wrapped in a bandage covering her eyes, and she had one shotgun wound to the chest, right through the heart. So this is when the first, real body that was discovered, which started leading towards a pattern. So Maxine Farrell, she was an Anchorage Police Department and she worked in the homicide unit. She was the first of two females. Now fucking go feminism. She was a completely badass lady. She noticed a pattern. So she had, there had been two other bodies that had been discovered before Sherry Morrow.
In the same area or?
Yeah, exact same area.
Yep.
Kinnick River, it was called. And this is when she started to really notice a pattern in the bodies. And she believed that there was a serial killer on the loose, but no one believed her.
Of course not. Why would they?
Nope, never.
Never.
So this is in June 1980, which was the earlier bodies that were discovered. It was in Eklutna, where a body was discovered, and Farrell was first on scene. The body was identified as a sex worker due to the jewellery and the type of clothing that she was wearing. She was called Eklutna Annie, and unfortunately she has never been identified. Her cause of death was a knife wound. So Farrell started kind of putting together a bit of a case notes and casework, because she got a lot of missing persons reports from sex workers. She got about 1 to 2 a month, and these were street workers or, prostitutes at the time. And she started asking a lot of, questions. She just really noticed a pattern that, obviously at the time, this was in the 1980s, no one really cared for sex workers, unfortunately. They were almost subhuman, didn't deserve the time of day. If someone went missing, they were like, you know what, she's just gone to another town to dance, packed up, gone to another town. She's not actually missing. So Farrell, started looking into these police reports, created a case. She was also a psychology major and noticed that all the women's jewelry, because she knew that most serial killers kept souvenirs. So from the missing persons report, she'd be like, all right, well, what jewelry is no longer in her, do you know a jewelry that she would always, a piece of jewelry she'd wear? So she noted down what was missing and if they had any pictures. So she was an absolute genius. She identified 10 girls that were linked to each other that were missing. And so she did a whole bunch of work. Yeah. She took her, whole month's work to her superiors. She was laughed at and they thought she was stupid, and she was dismissed in the meeting, not from her workplace. However, she was not stupid. She was actually on a very right path. So September 1983, another body was discovered in the same area. She was young. She also had a bullet wound through the heart. And this is when the media was like, right, this is messed up. There is a serial killer on the loose. On the loose. And on the loose. That's really messed up. I don't want to live with a serial
killer. 3 bodies rent a month.
Thank you. So this is when they're like, right, okay, we've got to get a task force. We've got to start actually looking into this a bit more. This is when Sergeant Glenn Felsky became involved in the case. He became the head of the unit, and he involved Maxine Foley. Unfortunately, her superiors did not allow her to work with them, but she did hand over her files for all the casework that she had done, which was a major help to the case.
Bless her.
I know, she's done a lot for this case here. So in June 1983, a young girl called Cindy Paulson, who was 17, was found with her hands handcuffed behind her back and no shoes. She had been raped and sexually assaulted. She had gotten away and was picked up by a truck driver, and then was taken to a motel, and he called the police, and police arrived. She had gotten away because she was going to be put on an aeroplane, and she knew she wasn't going to live if she was going to get on that aeroplane. So when he turned around, she got out of the passenger seat, and she ran. Luckily, she got away, and she was able to identify what the plane was and who the man was. So when they found the suspect, Robert Hansen, they said that he was way too soft-spoken. They didn't believe that he could be the person that was, the raper or the rapist. And they let him go. So these were not the officers that had actually identified, found the victim. And they really believed that what she said, because they believed her. They believed that she wasn't just a sex worker, or, she was 17. She was a young girl, and she was really upset with what happened, and they completely believed her. But unfortunately, what they said, that he was, Robert Hansen was an outstanding business owner. He owned a bakery, made the best donuts in town, and she was just a whore, unfortunately. So a couple months later, September 1983, one of the officers who was first on the scene to Cindy Paulson, the girl who had gotten away, looked up the case to see that there wasn't actually any further developments. Robert Hansen had been let go, and this made him incredibly upset. And he started looking into Hansen's background, and he noticed, that he had a lot of sexual misconduct in his case, in his previous lives. And he noted that he could be a prime suspect for the missing sex workers that Foley had identified. So he handed the information to the main case that he had found, and this is when Robert Hansen became the main suspect of the missing sex workers. So
how long has that taken us, a timeline?
So they identified that there was a serial killer in 1983. So, and the first murders had taken place in 1971 or 2, I believe.
And then Hansen was arrested.
He is arrested.
The prime suspect in 83 too?
Yep, 83 too. Okay. So that's when he became the prime suspect. So it's about 12 years later. So they started discovering the bodies in 1980s because the bodies were found in wilderness in Alaska. So in the middle of nowhere, very lucky that they were actually found. So he was very close to getting away with it. So
just setting up like a timeline in my head.
Yeah, where it was. Yeah, no, that's good. So October 27th, 1983, got a search warrant for his house, and during this time they took him into questioning or he denied all the allegations against him. They, brought the case to him and was like, look, listen, these are the 4 women that bodies we have found. We know that you've done it. While they interrogated Hansen, they were also looking at the house, and they asked Maxine Foley to attend because she knew what the jewellery looked like. So, unfortunately, the family was home and they were incredibly distraught when the search took place. They did not believe that, Robert could do something like this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it'd be horrible to think your father could do something like that.
Oh, absolutely.
So, searched the bedroom, searched the house, couldn't find anything. They moved to the attic, the last place to look, and this is where the rifles were discovered. So, they discovered the .223 rifle, which was connected to the 2 bodies found with the gunshot wounds, and they pulled back the last bits of insulation in the attic, and they found a plastic bag full of jewellery.
Oh my God.
And missing jewellery that Maxine had identified to the victims. And now there was no doubt in their mind, it was Robert Hansen.
Yes.
So at this time, the police did not have an airtight case, unfortunately, even with the jewellery. The one thing that they did also find at his house were aviation maps. And on these maps, the plane maps, because he owned a plane, and on these maps, they're little marks. 21 marks to be precise. And you know what these marks were? You know what they were? Bodies. It was a map of a graveyard where all the bodies were stored.
Holy shit.
Yep. So he was arrested on this day after finding the jewellery and the map. And 4 months after his arrest, he confessed. So the Kletner Annie, he said was his first victim, and he only confessed to the 4 murders that he knew the police were looking into. So he, said that, yep, this is all I've done. These are the only women I have killed. However, he did not know that the police had found his grave map.
Oh my God.
And this is when
excited.
This is when his face drops, because they tell him, listen, we know your map. We know it's a grave map. Stop lying to us. How many women have you actually killed? And this is when he began telling the stories of how he killed these women, how he found these women. He would pick up his victims from the street offering money, sex workers, or he would meet them at the clubs and invite them on the date in his aeroplane. So a lot of these women kind of were like, they saw him as a really nice guy, like, he's cute, he's got a stutter, like, I don't really get any bad vibes from him. I mean, like, he's he's nice, quiet. So they agreed to go on a date with him in his, cool aeroplane. How exciting.
Yeah.
Except he would take them to his hunting grounds. He would excuse me, I just burped. He would tie them up in his meat cabin, where he would rape them, sexually assault them, and hold them there for hours. After he was done, he would let them free in the middle of the wilderness, no one anywhere for hundreds of miles, no chance of them being found. And once he let them free, he would hunt them. He would follow their tracks as they tried to run away.
That is the one thing. I've heard a couple of cases where, like, they hunt them, and that freaks me the fuck out. That scares me.
I can't watch any movies. I've known there are some movies out there about hunting, their victims, and I just can't handle it.
No, the anxiety, the secondhand anxiety is real.
Just how stressed that they all must have felt.
Yeah.
It is, those poor women, what they must have gone through. I just can't. I don't want to even imagine. I can't imagine. Yeah. And this is when he would kill them with a hunting rifle or a knife. In the end, he confessed to 17 murders. And He was charged with the murders of the 4 women that the police had first found because the police wanted him to disclose where the bodies were and identify the victims so that the families could find out what happened to them and have closure.
Yeah.
So Hansen was sentenced to 461 years plus life, and he died of natural causes in 2014 at the age of 75.
Jesus. So how many did he kill altogether?
So they found 7 bodies that Hansen had helped them identify on the map. Unfortunately, the remaining 6 victims that Hansen confessed to have never been found or identified.
Wow.
So some bodies were found on the map that Hansen said he hadn't confessed to. However, they were found due to the X on the map. Some he said he would help the police officers find on the map, and then some that had the X mark, they couldn't find where that body was, in place. So it very horrific case. And one of a quote that I saved because what I had looked up were some of his tapes of when he was confessing to what he'd done. And he said, "Prostitutes are people I see who are lower than myself." So, yeah, it is.
Oh my God.
Very,
Jesus. I've never heard about that before. I don't know why, but I was expecting kind of like a cannibalism case.
I mean, you'd think so because it's like, I mean, I did say the butcher baker.
Yeah,
I think they only called him the butcher baker because one, he was a baker.
Yeah, which is totally fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he, in the end, I guess he did butcher them in more of like a killing way, I suppose.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a cut.
Yeah, straight up though, I was expecting
I
cannibalism.
know, yes. Well, instead of cannibalism, it should have been the stalker baker, I guess, or the hunter baker.
Yeah, that was intense, Erin. Jesus.
Yep. Sorry. Very horrible, very, very horrible case. And it really makes you, think about, Maxine Fowley actually said, if I had really pushed, if I had gone higher with the work I had done, I could have saved more women.
Yeah.
And
it's not on her.
It's definitely not on her. But it just shows like these poor women were just, seen and not worried about, And I feel like if you were a police officer, you'd want to look into every single case to make sure there were no missing people.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I mean, you'd think.
Yeah, but this was the time, I suppose, where, prostitutes, sex workers were, looked down upon, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, they still kind of are. So.
Yeah. It's slowly changing. I'm seeing more positivity about sex work in, being brought forward. So hopefully that'll change.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bob Hansen, the butcher baker.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was heavy.
Messed up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just like letting that soak in.
It was.
Yeah. Wow. My one. Let's have a drink first, but
that's all right.
So did you say that he had schizophrenia?
Yeah, he was diagnosed with it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I don't see, from what it seems, he kind of, I guess, didn't like women because he put them in the subgroup of, they hated me when I was a teenager. They were rude, they shunned me, so I don't like them anymore. But then also he was diagnosed, with schizophrenia, but also like he had such, one of the detectives actually said, if if he went up to a woman and was like, I'll pay you some money to come back to me, to come back home with me, and they were like, no, I don't really want to do that, he would leave them alone. However, if he went up to a woman and they accepted money, they were suddenly a bad person, a bad girl that needed to be killed. So,
wow, interesting.
yeah, I mean, he's just a messed up person.
Definitely. So,
I am ready, Jamie.
this is whack.
Oh.
Super duper whack. So, I'm just gonna put a massive trigger warning on mental health here. If at any point you think you hear voices, feel like you're looking kind of too much into signs, kind of in the biblical sense, things like that, please speak up and get mental health advice. So I'm just going to put that. So the definition, I've always struggled to say this word.
I'm already
like familicide. It's like family homicide.
Oh.
I can't say it. I can never say it. It states that it is when one family member murders the rest of the family. And what is schizophrenia? So schizophrenia is a long-term mental disorder involving a breakdown in the relation between thought, emotion, behavior, your perception on things, emotion, leading to kind of like a faulty perception, inappropriate actions or feelings, withdrawal from reality, personal relationships into fantasy and delusion. And a lot of people as well experience auditory hallucinations and as well as visual hallucinations. So it was 5:30 in the morning when neighbour Ed Field was having his morning coffee when he heard the sound of gunshots, and he saw some dark shadows, and then that was followed by screams. He called 911 and he could hear someone shouting orders. So I'm going to go into a backstory. So this man is called Bruce Blackman. He'd grown up in a large, nice family. Nothing too remarkable stands out in terms of trauma, abuse, or neglect. From everything that psychologists and psychiatrists went into, that he had quite a good family.
It's a normal upbringing.
Yeah, he was known as a really happy and generous person. So Bruce had begun to hear voices of a woman who he called the White Woman. She'd convinced Bruce that he was a god and he was in charge and the world was going to end. He would read the book of Revelations over and over again, believing that there was a special message in the book specifically for him. And if he found that special message, he could save the world. Right. From the time that the voice had begun to the time that he committed several murders was 46 days. So this is an incredibly steep time frame of mental health to deteriorate in terms of schizophrenia. So normally it is expected that schizophrenia develops over kind of a period of a longer time.
Yeah, that is really quick.
So yes, in just a month and a half, he went from a completely normal person to committing mass murder.
God.
Leading up to the event, Bruce was under psychiatric care. It was discovered that a psychiatrist hadn't really communicated with the family that people with schizophrenia can become violent. This may have been that it was such a large escalation kind of in the time frame. 9 years prior, he was attending a school and he was struggling in academics. So, and he wasn't really associated with, he didn't have too many friends. So his mother thought that he might have been suffering from a learning disability. So he was taken to a doctor and it was discovered that he was just dyslexic. The doctor had he had diagnosed him as a mirror twin. So Bruce did indeed have a twin. And the doctor put it into Bruce's brain that whatever his brother would do, good or bad, he would do the opposite.
Oh.
So that's what a mirror twin is. So kind of like, how it's really common, like kind of like that, you've got a set of twins and one's really good and one's really bad.
Right.
So that's what a mirror twin is. Yeah. So he was currently at college at this stage, so he wasn't living at home. He was studying. But he began to stop cutting his hair and stop changing his clothes. So he was kind of spiraling into a bit of a depression. His mother had said that when she came home from hospital with the twins, when he was born, that his twin was born at 9 pounds and 6 ounces, whereas Bruce was born as 6 pounds and 9 ounces.
Oh.
So this meant something really significant to Bruce. In his mind, obviously, he was the beginning of his mental health deteriorating. So he thought that being a mirror twin gave him a lot of purpose in life. So this was a sign of early psychosis that his family missed out on. He was kind of beginning to lose touch with reality. He had a job as a garbage man, so he was still stable at this point to be a functional human being of society. But he'd found a Bible that had been thrown out while he was working, and for some reason this really upset him. Like, he would often find a lot of good things, like people with nice used chairs. There was no reason to throw away a Bible, and this kind of really upset him. So he took that Bible home and he started reading it, and he became incredibly fixated on it. There was one event where he just began lashing out at his father and his father's friends who were military men, saying that they were controlled by the government and warmongers. And he completely just blew up out of nowhere, just started screaming, and then just left. And they were just kind of like, oh, okay, like this is a bit unusual, but no one read too much into it. The next day, he'd acted like nothing had ever happened. He didn't even remember it.
Yeah.
He did not even remember it. His family still didn't think too much into it. There was another. So the way I discovered this, there's not much that I could really find online about this, which is quite surprising. So I had to listen to a podcast, conveniently enough, to get this one. So there was another situation when he was at his dorm with his housemate had come down, and Bruce had set out 5 cups, all evenly spaced. He put on some coffee, and then he poured 5 cups of coffee. And his housemate was like, roommate was like, who are these for? And he was like, oh, we've got some friends coming over. I really need you to sit down. The world's going to end. And
Oh my God.
his roommate just kind of like laughed at him, thinking it was a joke. But then he actually realized how incredibly serious Bruce was about this. So I feel like this feels like this is incredibly rushed into, but you have to understand that he was totally normal, totally normal. And then one of the very first events was pouring of the coffee and yelling at his dad's. So just very quickly that these events just happened.
Yep. So there was like no indication beforehand?
No, nothing. And a lot of experts think that with a lot of mental health disorders that kind of currently pop up, such as schizophrenia, and because it's they usually develop in the later 20s, around 22 and up, that it's kind of brought on from a trauma. They think whether a family member has died, a breakdown of a relationship, it literally just happens. And there's no warning. So yeah, the family didn't think that his episodes were really concerning, which is concerning. He had read somewhere that the rituals of communion and bodily excretions were a way that he could save the planet.
Bodily
excretions such as blood, semen,
Oh.
things like that. So he had from reading the book of Revelations, there's something called the Little Book, which I can't give you any more information about. It's just called the Little Book. So so in the book of Revelations, there's a little book, and so the little book is said to say that a man's semen and a woman's menstrual blood would let you see God if you consumed them. So you would have to ingest that, and he became incredibly fixated on this. So he started to really read into this, and then he started to masturbate excessively, and then start to drink his semen. However, he began to what's the word? excessively annoy his family with the same ideas. So he would call his sisters, call his brothers, and be like, hey, you have to drink your semen, you have to drink your menstrual blood, you have to do this. And they were just like, you need to stop. Like, go back to your life. Like, this is weird. Stop annoying me, kind of thing. So, oddly enough, some of Bruce's visions and kind of theories, some of them were kind of accurate, which is a little bit concerning. So there were some numbers that he was reading in the Book of Revelations that if you added them, if you added them up, he would get the perfect amount of family members in his family as the number that he got. However, he became convinced that one of his sisters was pregnant because I think there was only like 6 family members, but he needed 7. So he was like, okay, well, this doesn't work. So one of my sisters has to be pregnant. So he called 2 of his sisters and was like, are you pregnant? And they both said no. And he called his older sister and she was indeed pregnant, but she hadn't told anyone yet.
Oh my God.
Yes. So it's kind of like, oh,
coincidental.
Yeah. So once he figured that out, he just kind of left it be for a little bit, but then he started to annoy his the other sisters who weren't pregnant again. So he would tell them to consume their period blood, and they were like, no, like you need to stop again. This is like he's picked it back up, and they're like, no. So he was staying with one of his sisters one night, and she was at work, so she went to work, and he had found one of her used pads with blood on them. So what he did was he took the blood from the pad, some fruit, chicken stock, and pages of the Bible, and blended it together.
Oh.
When she came home, he forced her to drink it. Thankfully, she didn't have too much and then tipped it down the sink. But because she had ingested some, he saw this as a success. He was like, okay, she will now be able to see God. So then he turned to his next sister, who was kind of described as his protector. She was very, very protective of him, always defended him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you have to drink your menstrual blood. So she was like, okay, I'll do it. And then he left her alone. However, she ended up moving out of home. He would often visit his family, obviously. She ended up moving out of home and in with the neighbours because it got to the point where she was so scared of him. He called his twin brother, who was at the time in the Canadian Armed Services, and started telling him to eat his semen. And he was like, you have lost it. You need to stop. You need to stop rambling. And like, this is enough. And he hung up. On that day, he called the Canadian National Defence Force and tried to talk to them. And he even went as far as to call the Pope in Rome. And he even tried to contact a Pope in another country. So he had made 8 phone calls that day, one being to his brother, one being to the Pope in Rome, and the Canadian Defence Force. So by this time, his family was like, okay, enough. The family decided to contact a psychiatrist, and on this day, because he was incredibly manic, they injected Bruce with a really strong antipsychotic who eventually calmed him down and made him sleep, and it was said that he hadn't slept for the entire month.
Oh my God.
However, 3 days later, he targeted his sister. For some reason, one article that I found said that his sister's name was Angela. However, you'll see the issue soon. He targeted his sister Angela, who lived a 10-hour bus ride away. So he decided to take the bus. So apparently it was about 3 buses. So this shows the state that he was in, because he deep down believed that the world was ending, but he was still so functional enough to organise 3 bus trips 10 hours away to stay at his sister's. So he broke into his sister's house that night and he would watch her sleep. The next day, she woke up and she was really concerned about him. She was like, you can stay here again. She didn't do anything. She didn't call her father. nothing. So the next day, Bruce was in the kitchen and he decided to make her breakfast because, just to kind of say thank you. And her husband was like, I'm happy to stay home. I'm not happy with you being here alone. And she's like, no, Bruce wouldn't hurt a fly. Everything's okay. So he went to work. So this is the pregnancy it was at. And so he made her an omelette and she described it as being incredibly bitter. She tried to take a couple more mouthfuls and she just could not ingest it. So she decided to give it to the dog. Within hours, both the dog and Angela became incredibly sick. So sick to the point that Angela had to go to the doctors and they thought that she was going to lose the baby. The dog lived, thankfully. Apparently, it spent several days, was incredibly ill and very disoriented. However, it survived. So all these events have unfolded within 30 days. You have a brother, everything's completely normal, and suddenly he's just
Crazy.
not okay.
Yeah.
Crazy. Completely crazy. I don't want to use the word, but
No.
he's completely.
But
So at this point,
it's
sorry.
so quick. It's so quick. Like,
yeah.
It just seems crazy how quick it was.
Yeah, and that's the issue with this case is that there's no forewarning. There's nothing to even talk about before all of these things started happening. It's just that this was a regular man, and this has just happened. So Christmas was coming. This happened in November. The poisoning incident. So it was coming around to Christmas, and Bruce was absolutely obsessed with having to bring the family together. They all kind of lived a little bit far away from each other. However, Angela naturally refused to come to Christmas, but Bruce couldn't understand why. He couldn't understand why his sister didn't want to come to Christmas. And he was seeing the psychiatrist still at this point, so he was still having regular sessions with him and was supposed to be put on medication. They had a psychiatrist session with the dad and Bruce, and the psychiatrist asked, he goes, are you still taking your medication? And dad goes, you better be. But that was it. No one was actually monitoring if Bruce was taking his medication. And in fact, he wasn't. So Christmas came and went. Nothing happened. There was no incidences. A couple of months went by. The family kind of started to feel a bit relieved. Maybe whatever was happening with Bruce. Was it drugs? We don't know. That's what they were thinking. Cool, no problem. However, he had been just accepted into another college, and this was a couple of hours away. Bruce didn't really want to go. The psychiatrist didn't want Bruce to go. However, the dad insisted that he go. And the dad and mother were even like, we'll pay for everything, we'll give you weekly allowances, things like that. They thought that it would be really good for him. So on the bus ride to the college, he had met this girl, Mary. So she had kind of put some ideas into Bruce's head, and that is said to be the real point where the switch flipped in Bruce's brain. She was talking to him about the fact that there was no death, she could time travel, all those kind of crazy things. Like he just kind of conveniently met a lady who was very similar to him. Now, police and psychologists have checked bus records. They don't know if this lady actually existed.
So
they are not sure.
It could have been.
So yeah, so they don't know if she actually existed. So this kind of confirmed Bruce's idea that he still believes that the world is ending. He's still trying to, still drinking semen. He's still in this mindset that everyone's going to die. So he's like, well, in his head, he's like, if we're all going to die, but this girl is telling me that no one actually dies, I can do something about this. So he has confirmed that he's going to kill his family. He has decided that this is what he wants to do. So he gets to his college, he sets up everything. He's not even there for one night before he's back on a bus ride home. So by the next day, He heads home impulsively, but no one questions why. No one questions why he's home. They're just like, okay, he's back. That was it. So he talks to his psychiatrist and he's concerned about Bruce. And the psychiatrist tells his father that he needs to take him to the hospital and sedate him now. But his father says, no, that's not happening because the hospital was 5 miles away and it's already late. So he believes that he can take care of Bruce himself.
Yeah.
So this is on the 18th of January in 1983. So Bruce is 22 years old, so he's young. He calls one of his sisters and he urges her to come over. And it is, by that point, it is 4:50 in the morning. Because this is really concerning and because he's acting odd, the sister calls the psychiatrist and the psychiatrist tells her to call the police.
Oh, God.
However, she didn't.
What?
Richard Blackman, who was 50, who was the father, his wife Irene Catherine, who was 49, one son Richard Joseph, all whom resided at that one residence, were found dead.
My
Also found
God.
dead at the scene were Roberta Lynn Davies, who was 28, her husband John Davies, 39, and another sister, Karen Dale Rhodes, who was 25. Bruce was only 128 pounds and he was not very tall. So it is said that all of his strength has come from his breakdown. So this is fast forwarding again to 5:30 in the morning when Ed Field is having his morning coffee. He sees some shadows in his window, the neighbors. He hears some gunshots and he hears screams. The police arrive and find Bruce wandering down the road. They ask, hey, what's happened about the gunshots? And he says, I don't know anything about it. There were 3 police officers there. 2 of the police officers go into the house and the rookie is left with Bruce.
No.
They find all bodies scattered across the house. 3 have been bludgeoned to death and the rest were shot. It was said that one of the sisters who was murdered got shot and she basically tried to drag herself away. While the 2 police officers had discovered the scene, the rookie was still left with Bruce and Bruce calmly admitted to everything. He pleaded guilty to 6 counts of murder, however was found not guilty on the reason of insanity. He was released from the psychiatric hospital in 1995 and was released with a new identity.
What?
And that is it.
Oh.
Yep.
I thought people I thought reason of insanity people were to stay in hospital for basically all their lives.
Schizophrenic is curable.
Not
curable, but it is
manageable. But also, oh my God, 6 lives.
6 lives. And
With
including
18 years served? Less?
Yep. So this all happened in 46 days.
46 days.
46 days, he just went from a completely normal human being like you and I and just broke.
You really just hope the people around you, I mean, this was, you said 1980s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mental illness wasn't as openly talked about back then. So you'd hope during these days, it could be a completely different story.
Yeah. The other podcast I listened to, it was Sword and Scale. It's the very first episode. Mike Boudet, he talks with a psychiatrist, and he also talks with she's a journalist, but she wrote a book about the situation. And they were saying that when someone with schizophrenia hears a voice, most of the time they don't look around and what was that voice? They don't do that. By the point that they're already hearing voices, they just believe that they're genuinely hearing it, like you're hearing me. So, and then what their brain does, it then creates a story as to why they're hearing these voices to work kind of around it, to make sense of everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the brain's so fragile.
Yes.
You'd almost have to have that happen, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Because otherwise there's no way that you can fathom that. There's no way you can fathom why you're hearing a voice that's not your voice or anyone around you. So it's got to be you.
Yeah.
And, there's got to be a reason as to why you're hearing it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus, that's messed up.
Yeah. I just find this one so fascinating. I honestly just find mental illness fascinating. But just the quick decline in mental health and the forcing of the menstrual blood, the Book of Revelations, and
You can
just
just see how mental illness, like, it's not a made up thing. Like, this, it's not. No normal person would willingly drink their own semen. Would want to drink menstrual blood.
Yeah.
Would be thinking that the
There's
world.
a lot of kind of things. Yeah. There's a couple of things there that I've left out, but I strongly recommend if you listen to the first episode of Sword and Scale, that goes into a bit more detail. But I think I find it so odd, like I said before, that it was just, there was nothing beforehand. No first victim, no hurting of animals, no bullying, no major trauma. Nothing, just a regular person
decline. Yeah.
that just
My God.
And then
Like, and that, I think
murdered his
that's the scary thing, isn't it? Because it could happen to anyone of us.
Yep. So I think Angela. So yeah, I was a bit confused on some of the names there and things like that, and I do believe that the only members who weren't murdered were the pregnant sister and the twin brother. And I can't. It's quite. I tried to Google it, and I couldn't really get that much out of it. So yeah, I had to use the other podcast. And it was a bit hard trying to listen to it, pause, write down.
Yeah, and then keep going. Yeah, it's hard. That's when you do documentaries. It's really hard because you have to. You're so invested, and then you're like, "Wait, what was that date again?"
Yeah, literally. And because there's so much to listen to, and you're just captivated at the same time.
I just can't believe they released them so early. I mean,
I think that, and the biggest thing as well is like how the family did not seek help so many times. Like I hope if I'm coming up with that shit, someone calls the police.
I know. You'd want, and like even the psychiatrist. I wonder how the psychiatrist feels. Like could I have done something more? How did I not notice this decline? Oh.
I mean, that's the thing, is like it was such a big decline that you can't even really monitor that. I mean, that's what, for 6 weeks if you see that person once a week. What you probably see this patient 4 times, have a massive meltdown, and then before you know it, their family's calling you at 4 a.m.
Oh.
And you're just like, call the police, take him to the hospital. But no.
Oh, thanks, Naomi.
It's like nothing to say.
Yeah, I know. I mean, mental illness, like horrible, like
it's mental illness, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's a TikTok thing. Bad joke. But yeah, that's kind of why I said before, like if you at any point, if you have any kind of detached from reality, even if that's a dissociation. I've had a really bad dissociation episode once. I walked around for a couple of hours in Frankston and I didn't remember it. I kind of came to, and I'd managed to kind of like halfway walk home, and I just started bawling my eyes out, and I called my mum. Mum took me to the hospital. That was in year 12. So if you have, I called my psychiatrist, and she was like, go to the hospital straight away. I called my psychologist because I was like, I don't want to go to the hospital. Even my psychologist was like, go to the hospital straight away. They're just like, go there, you can hurt yourself, you can hurt someone else.
Yeah,
So
that's very good.
if you experience a dissociation episode, voices, suicidal thoughts, thoughts that you're going to hurt someone else, seek help. And if you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for other people, and vice versa. Because it can be a shit show very quickly.
Yeah.
I think this doesn't help though. There's a lot of stigma around schizophrenia. A lot of people believe that people with schizophrenia are going to hurt you, but that's not the case.
I know.
Apparently 90% of the time people with schizophrenia really are harmless. So I don't want to put that message out there because that's not the case. This is just kind of a one-off.
Absolutely. And I think we need to realize, like, as we talk about like murderers who do have schizophrenia, we do need to mention in the end, it's not like, like that's how, if someone was abused as a child, well, someone else could be abused as a child and they don't end up murdering their families.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
No way saying, that one person. Oh, a female person who murdered a lot of people. That doesn't mean Jamie and you and I are going to go out murdering.
Yeah. So, speak for yourself. No, I'm kidding. Tell you what, sometimes I love it tested. But yeah, it's just such a heavy thing. You're just kind of like, oh.
Especially mental illness, it's a very fragile thing.
It is.
To stick around as well. Well, I think we should talk about what made us happy because this was just a whole bunch of depression.
That really was. You can go first.
Child murders, hunting, mental illness.
Yeah, it's all in here this week. It's all in here.
Got it all.
Yeah, we literally got everything.
Yes. What made
it was even technically cannibalism. Like I feel like
almost cannibalism. That I guess it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, technically.
Semen is
semen and menstrual blood.
Cannibalism, definitely.
It's cannibalism.
We're meant to be thinking about happy things.
Yes, happy things.
Gosh. What's made me happy? I think my 3 days off is honestly made me super, super happy. Just knowing that I don't have to go to work tomorrow. Tonight.
No, you deserve a really good break.
Thank you.
When you're allowed to come over, feel free.
Oh my god. We're getting drunk.
Oh yeah.
So drunk. What made you happy this week, Jake?
This week. This is hard. I haven't done much. I got to see my friend the other day, and I haven't seen her since kind of like my accident. So that was really nice.
That's nice.
We met up at the park, just a little bench, and just caught up for an hour, which was really lovely.
That's so good. It's good to have outside interaction apart from your family.
Yes. Oh my god, honestly.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah, me too.
Good. Oh. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening, watching, whatever platform you're on.
Yeah. Hopefully we haven't depressed you too much.
Yeah, hope not.
Well, yeah, thanks guys for listening to our Corpses and Cocktail. And Erin.
You can't spell laughter.
Manslaughter. We actually are never gonna get this right ever.
You know what? Did I say last time that one person should say you can't spell laughter, and then someone else should say without manslaughter, or we should say without manslaughter together? I don't know.
You got it wrong again though. You can't spell manslaughter without laughter. No, you can spell laughter without manslaughter.
Yes, you can. I didn't mess up. I was really confident too. I was
so confident.
I was 100%
I
confident.
was like, do I tell her? And I was like, yeah. Yeah.
You can't spell manslaughter
without
without
laughter.
laughter.
Bye. See you next week. Bye.